What's up, YouTube? I've had some people over on Instagram send me some of their work. They want me to give them some advice and what I think could make their work a little bit better. Getting good at any kind of skill just takes time. It is not something you're gonna be able to pick up overnight. First things first, practice more. You guys could turn the video off now. All right, so this first dude says he's been doing leather for about 9 months. He is concerned that his shadowing doesn't come out super dark and that sometimes his swivel knife feels good, but sometimes it doesn't feel quite as smooth. So right off the jump, he's got the hyphy ass edit with the hat. So he's got the cameraman skills. That's huge, especially for kind of beginners. That's one of the first things I see people struggling with. It's like practicing. You're gonna figure out the flow. I can kind of see your belt pattern. Your belt pattern's pretty rad. I don't know if you drew that or exactly what, but I like the kind of flow of the belt pattern. From what I can tell, we're off to like a good start. I actually really like the layout of the cow skull and the Chevy logo on that hat. I don't know what that other thing is. It looks like it might be like a guitar or something, but I like the way that you have things spaced, so that's definitely one of your strong points. So maybe try and lean into like cool spacings of things. As for like having contrast, I think is partially what you're asking me. Thinking about like the shadowing doesn't come out as dark. So just for example, this belt photo with the flower, I mean, that thing's not stained. So you're not really gonna get any of that shading. Also that really pale kind of hide. I'd go out on a limb and say that this is like a really pale tandy hide that doesn't burnish very well when you tool it. I think there's two things that you may be running into, like particularly on your belt pattern, is one, you could be wiping too much of the excess off and not leaving enough down in the crevices and stuff. It just looks like you didn't bevel them super well. But if you like look at some of the details, like whatever that tool is that you use to kind of make those markings, like they stain in there really well. So what you need to figure out is how to get the rest of your vine work to kind of stay like that. I mean, your basket weave looks really good. I don't see any stain issues with the basket weave. I think it's just something you're doing with the floral itself. So stay at it for sure. You gotta just practice, try new things. All right, so this dude is 17. He said he got a handful of tools from an uncle, and now he's working on getting some more stuff for himself. So he's been kind enough to attach every single project he's ever done. I would love to know like in what order these things, like if I can watch his progression. But just browsing at your work, I mean, it looks like he's made 6 or 7 things, and that's the big thing. Like, man, just it's a lot of it's just practice. 7 things is like 2 or 3 days in my shop, maybe 4 days if they're pretty time intensive. Just in reference to know like how much they're doing it. And with every single project you make, it's an opportunity to learn and get better. So we'll just go down the list. Oh, this is an ASU. It looks like a little hair deal. I have not seen one of these hair deals in a long time. I mean, for the most part, for a guy who's only done like 2 or 3 things, it's really good. It was a really good start. I always suggest people start tooling like logos and letters and really simple images so you can like understand what you need to bevel and what you don't need to bevel, and getting a better understanding of the actual tools themselves. I know personally, and I believe a lot of other leather crafters, they don't necessarily like think of like, oh, I bevel this line. They like have a better understanding of how the whole picture looks, and they use bevelers and texturing tools and stuff more like paintbrushes in a way where you're like, oh, this line needs to show shadowing here. Like that little arrow, you go like, well, we want the arrow to stick out. So in order to make the arrow pop, you want to go ahead and like, you know, add some drop shadowing behind that so it brings that image forward. I mean, it's done pretty well. I mean, all I can say about this is like, you know, some of those rectangles down below are a little janky, but it's not horrible. But for the most part, man, like you're 4 or 5 in, that's pretty solid tooling. I like the contrast. It looks like some kind of rope bag. So here's the patch itself. This, I mean, man, it's hard to say really what's wrong, especially in the beginning. There's kind of so much stuff that I could sit here and nitpick, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to say this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong. I mean, it mainly comes down to practice and time. The smoothness of the bevels and everything, definitely that will get worked out over time. The main thing I would say is that your oak leaves, sure, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of don't like the green. Actually, I kind of hate the green, sorry dude. with yours in particular, one thing I'm noticing is like kind of a crazy use of colors. I'm not saying that colors are bad. You know, most people think of oak leaves kind of autumn colors. So although they might be green at one point in their lifespan, you want to use probably what's the most identifiable. So you have to consider like, is doing this kind of these hard big blocks of green gonna help my piece, or is it just like an unnecessary use of color? So maybe using a softer green or something that's not gonna be so like bright and in your face. The only other thing is that skull, on stuff that's a little bit out of your comfort zone, I'd recommend using like, you know, finding images that you can tool. Looking here at your other work, I see you did some like horses and some cows. Ooh, and you got this like wallet here with the guns and the knives. Like, I mean, those look pretty good. Those like definitely use like references. There's no shame. I mean, some people build a whole business off of, you know, transferring Don Gonzalez patterns, and people make straight honest livings off of that. So don't be afraid to like pull an image of a bull skull or like a horse head. Especially in the beginning, you're gonna wanna kind of trace as much stuff as you can just to get the fundamentals down before you start getting kind of crazy. I like your keychain. It looks really nice. Your braiding looks absolutely incredible. Maybe lean into that a little bit more. There's not a lot of people who do really sick, elaborate braiding on stuff. I don't know if this is supposed to be kind of like a lotus-y looking thing, but the same thing with the colors. I find that a lot of beginners, they kind of they pick colors that they like instead of colors that work well together. There's plenty of colors that I like that I don't really use too much, or, you know, picking maybe one color you like and then doing colors that are complementary. Just like with this lotus piece, it's, you know, it's like, it looks like a beginner piece. There's nothing like glaringly wrong with it. Obviously I would like to see it a little bit more refined and whatnot. It looks like maybe there's some, you know, some of those lines don't look beveled. Those bevels are gonna help give you dimension. I mean, the sunflower piece is really good. I would definitely say those sunflowers don't look terrible. I actually really like the flow. The way that you have the lettering up top and then the floral comes swooping down below. It's really solid. That gun piece with the cards, I would love to have seen that finished. But I mean, other than that, man, you're off to a good start. I mean, if this is really everything that you've ever made, like you're saying it is, then you're kind of nailing it, dude. This is where you'd expect to be in this amount of time. I definitely do like the ASU logo though. Very solid. Dial in those fundamentals before you start biting off more than you can chew. Okay, so this next dude is just very new as well. It's kind of difficult when you're this new to the game to really give any kind of realistic advice. When you're like on early pieces, like, I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, it takes months to even get like handy holding tools right. Like, my biggest takeaway for your first times running a swivel knife, your parallel lines are pretty good. Parallel lines are super incredibly difficult, so I would avoid doing really tight parallel lines when you're in the beginning, just because you don't have your swivel knife skills quite dialed in, and any bit of wobble you're going to be able to see with parallel lines. As I'm sure you could tell, lettering is pretty difficult. It's kind of the same thing with that. You don't want to do too much fine lettering. Stick with like some block lettering. Just keep your stuff big, readable. I like the idea. All the other same advice as everybody else. It's really practice. When you're that new, it's hard to give you anything tangible because you're still like learning how to swing your hammer, which way to hold the tools, and all that kind of stuff. Keep it simple. Logos, letters. Keep it simple in the beginning. All right, so this next guy says he's currently working on improving his drawing skills, so his tooling designs are good to start with. And he's also just trying to like figure out tooling in general. With this dude, I'm not gonna lie, I'm already pretty impressed. It looks like your craftsmanship is pretty spot on. Like this first piece with the belt and the stitching, like the stitching is incredibly clean. All right, so our man Cole Stagner says he's been at it for about 6 months, doing it on and off for several years, and he's in college right now, and he's got a part-time job. He doesn't get to do it as much as he'd like, but he's been trying to pursue. All right, Cole, unless you're gonna go to school to be like some kind of profession that makes a shitload of money, dude, you definitely got what it takes to do leather stuff for a living. I dropped out of college to pursue my leather crafting career, because it's kind of like all I knew. I was like, this is the one thing I'm kind of good at. My boy Cole here is beating himself up a little bit more than I think he should be. I know when you're trying to improve, you're like, what is the deal? How do I get better? Like, this isn't making sense. Fuck, man, whatever. Like, the biggest thing to remember is that you can only really learn so much with every piece that you do. If you can take one lesson away from every single project, that's a huge victory. The progress you're making super solid. The first photo he sent with this belt and this sheath, like, honestly, man, I'm pretty dang impressed. Like, I really can't say anything wrong with it. Your basket weave is super clean, man. Like, your stitching on that sheath is like so spot on. Your basket weave is super square. I think that you're at almost a point where you need to learn like the little, I like to think of them as like little Versace tricks, where you're not like learning like whole ass lessons, you're like learning little tricks here and there. For example, like on the basket weave, like if you could have maybe tried to plan out a little bit better to have that basket weave on the sheath kind of match the same angle as the basket weave on the belt, like that would be sick. You know, the only other thing I could say is that it is a little bit weird that your basket weave kind of just goes off and fades into the letters. Maybe we could do something to pimp out the tip of that belt a little bit more, like either, you know, at least give yourself a border the rest of the way around, maybe a couple ghost, you know, really light taps of those basket weaves just to kind of give it a little something, some bit of texture. I don't really have anything bad to say. I really like your diamond tuck pattern, particularly the wallet on the right. I like the cross on the left, but the diamond tuck on the right, you got a definitely an older style, kind of Visalia style tooling, which is pretty sick. You don't really see that a lot more. I don't know if that's necessarily what you're going for, but I don't see anybody pushing Visalia style too hard. Nothing I can really say about those. The only thing I can really rip you apart about is like trying to plan out the floral, the corner a little bit better, like maybe even, you know, draw out a corner piece and then trace it to it so you could at least tuck your floral into the corner a little bit nicer, because one you have bleed over the edge and the other one you have come away from the edge. Then I'm moving down to this other knife sheath, which honestly, man, is pretty effing sick. It's really clean. I'm having a hard time picking out anything wrong with this at all. If you want me to be honest, it almost doesn't even look like the same person. You know, when you're at this stage of your leather crafting career, when you're like right on the cusp of really dialing shit in, you'll do like some pieces where you're like, oh fuck, I still don't know what I'm doing, and then like magic will happen and you'll fucking nail it on the next piece. And I think that's probably just what happened here. Whatever you did on that knife sheath, just try and replicate that again. I'm gonna go to the last thing you sent me. I mean, you're like man, I'm telling you, you're like on the cusp. Just stick at it. Really solid. I really like everything. The only thing I can kind of get on you about, your flow is really good. You have really nice lines. The only thing I'd say is, especially with pieces like this, is to try and just work on filling your space out. On this rectangle piece, you got this leaf up in the top right corner. If you just did that leaf a little bit bigger and you left out those little empty spaces, it would be killer. But the only other thing I can say about this, you have floral going in the wrong directions in a couple places. Just for example, like on this one here on the right, you got your 3 flowers. You got this vine that comes down off of the second and loops around your bottom petal. But when you actually follow that vine up, you see that the leaf's going the other way. So floral is not necessarily like an actual plant, but never in anywhere in nature would you have a leaf going one way with branches going the opposite way. You always want it to kind of be going the same direction. And same here on this one with the left. You know, there's simple tricks, like you could have just flipped that leaf upside down. And I'd rather have seen that leaf flip upside down and kind of come out of the border or something, and then just continue your vine up and over from there. But I mean, other than that, really solid. Anyways, Cole, you're nailing it, buddy. Actually, everybody here is nailing it for pursuing a hobby and a passion as an adult. I hope I wasn't too brutal. I tried to be super honest. Everybody starts somewhere. At every single point of my journey, I was where one of you guys were. whether that was just first starting out and going like, how the fuck do I even hold this swivel knife? You just work on it and work on it and work on it. Don't be afraid to try new things. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was actually super fun to do. I do love helping people out. Thank you guys for watching. I hope I helped you. This was a blast. I'm definitely gonna be doing this again. So until next time, Bryan Sosack with the Man in Black Leather Studio. When all the answers were inside the whole time, until I realized that I was just annoying.